in the house, and we're going to talk a little Niners. May even do a little mock draft. Talk a little bit about Deebo. We'll talk a little bit about the wide receiver position, the defensive line, the offensive line. It's all starting right here, right now. Let's go. All right, welcome to the Krug Show Thursday night, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. They do run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket. Get some brisket chili. Tell them the Krug sent you. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, along the Monterey Peninsula. My friend Anthony Catania is at 831-521-5264. And tonight's live stream is brought to you by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. I did it a bunch this year. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. And thanks to Better for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. Sterling Bennett in the house. Sterling, good to see you, man. How's life?
It's been good. I tell you this, Larry, I have been waiting to get the call back so I can hear you read that Pig in a Pickle read for a long, long time. So it's good to be back on the show.
Dude, it's great to see you. Sterling and I worked together at 95.7 The Game, and now Sterling is relocated down to Southern California, but he's still doing a lot of incredible stuff covering the 49ers. And tell people if they want to keep up with you or if they want to, start reading some of the stuff you're putting out there and follow you on your YouTube channel. Tell them where to find you, how to find you. We'll start right there.
Yeah, so the social media is 49ers Access. You can see it's on X on the screen right there in front of you. The YouTube channel, same thing, 49ers Access as well as the podcast. For my reading people out there, heavy.com, cover the Niners. And unfortunately, I also cover the Green Bay Packers, but plenty of news coming out, both those teams this offseason. So really, really, really pumped to cover both those guys.
Well, and you have a brand new member here. We have Ver9er, who's a new member to your channel. Ver9er, Sterling thanks you, and everybody who wants to jump in via the text, we got a bunch of texts. You can jump in here. Half Dead says, Larry, have you lost weight? Huh? Oh, I'd love to hear that. I don't know. I don't think so, but you never know. I've been working out, doing some lifting. I did put up 225 the other day on the bench, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. Because
put you on the offensive line at this point.
Seriously, yeah. I mean, two-hand shiver, It's like, I could do 2 plates on the flat bench. I could do a plate and a quarter on the incline and decline, and that's about as much as I want to do. But I've been working out a little bit, trying to stay in good shape. So thank you, Half Dead. Yes, I have probably dropped a couple pounds. All right, there was a story that was out today on 49er Web Zone about, it's titled Insiders, 49ers Convinced Deebo Samuel Relationship is Over, Releases the Likely Outcome. So Tim Kawakami of the SF Standard, basically has put out a bunch of things, and Deebo's responded to some of them. Tim put out earlier today that Deebo is 20 pounds overweight. And Deebo kind of pushed back on that and was like, hey, everybody, stop talking about this and that. The Niners have given Deebo's agent permission to seek a trade. And yet Matt Barrows, I think there's a few people out there that have kind of suggested that, this is probably not going to result in a trade, that ultimately it may result in Deebo being released. I think it's likely that he's done with the Niners. Tim Kawakami on the 49ers Plus Minus podcast said, I guess Kawakami wondered if the Niners were allowing Samuel to gauge his market value and maybe, leading to a return to the team or what. And he said that the people that he talked to, they've dismissed that notion. The quote was, I checked, it's not that. I've heard that the two sides are separating in their minds. Now things can change. Who knows If he has no opportunities out there, that might be different, but I don't think he has no opportunities if the Niners release him. He might even have a nice new deal, but as a release player, not as a traded player, more likely. And that the two sides are, I don't want to say irreconcilable, but it's likely that the two sides have decided that they're ready to separate. So he counts $15.8 million against the Niners cap. And his numbers have gone down. I mean, his numbers have declined. He had 14 touchdowns in 2021. He had 800 yards this year and 4 total touchdowns. Just 3 years after having almost 1,800 scrimmage yards, he had almost 1,000 less yards. Kawakami said he had a bad year. He's not in shape. I said it on last week's podcast, 20 pounds. I keep hearing it, 20 pounds overweight. Anyway, Deebo didn't like that. He kind of shot back at Kawakami. I don't think it really means anything. Matt Barrows of The Athletic believes the 49ers will ultimately release Deebo. Trading him is complicated. Doing so before June 1st would result in a dead cap hit twice as large as simply keeping him. However, the 49ers could reduce the salary cap impact by designating him a post-June release. The only reason I'm not sure about where this is going is that John Lynch did say to us at the end of the year, we're not in the business of giving away good football players, when he was asked specifically about Deebo. And if they want to trade him, they can take a bigger cap hit and trade him and get some draft pick compensation. I don't think it's going to be a significant compensation. I would say I'm on record as saying I think at best it's a 5th round pick. What's the end game here? How's this going to come to a conclusion? When is it going to come to a conclusion? He's got that big bonus coming to him in March, so I got to imagine whatever's going to happen is going to happen before that bonus gets paid. What's your feeling on Deebo, how it stands, and how it's going to end?
I'm very thankful the fact that we can now say goodbye to Deebo Samuel in the offense. That said, this all comes down to money. It always has. Deebo wanted the big contract in 2022. He got one, 3 years, $71 million. Although throughout that time, he was asking for trades, posting on social media, this, that, and the other. But like you said, a lot of this comes down to that March 22nd date with the $15 million bonus hits. That's about 10-ish days after the new league year starts. So theoretically, San Francisco is going to have about just over a week to see what they can do with Deebo. That said, Kawakami's report of him being 20 pounds overweight, it's funny, looking back at whether it's training camp or OTAs or preseason, a lot of the talk was he's in the best shape of his entire career. He looks phenomenal. What happened? Did he gain 20 pounds during the year? Is this a 20 pounds he's gained since the year ended, which has kind of turned San Francisco off? I know John Lynch, they always overvalue their players. Jimmy Garoppolo, wanted the 2nd round pick, couldn't get that. Deebo Samuel, the best you're probably going to get is maybe a late 4th rounder if you're lucky. I just don't know if Jed York is willing to spend $15 extra million he doesn't have to keep Deebo Samuel on the team 10 more days after the new league year begins. I'm hoping they can find an agreement with the trade somewhere. But if Jed York says enough's enough, that's what it all comes down to. $15 million can be the end-all be-all when it comes to separating Deebo Samuel from the San Francisco 49ers. But I'm honestly happy. I think it helps the offense. I think it helps a lot of things with Kyle Shanahan to get Deebo off this team in 2025.
I thought, I really thought he was done as soon as I saw Kyle, really go to him in that Rams game. It just said to me, you know what? Kyle knows they're parting ways, and he wants to make sure that on the way out the door that he gives Deebo a full opportunity to save himself, or, he talked a big game. I am not losing it. I'm not getting the ball. That was his talk going into that game. I'm not losing it. People think I'm losing it. I'm not losing it. I'm just not getting the football. And then he dropped the key ball that could have been a touchdown. He played terrible in the game.
Yeah.
At that point, I thought, okay, Kyle's his buddy. Kyle wants to have a friendship with him after football. And Kyle knows, hey, you know what? Let's feed him. He's been big in some big games. He was big in Philly 2 years ago in that game down the stretch. He's been the big dog in a lot of the Niners' biggest games. I mean, Deebo has risen to the occasion, and maybe Kyle thought he would rise to the occasion, or maybe Kyle just wanted to give a guy that he knew they were parting ways with, one more opportunity to kind of show what he had and maybe elevate. And not only did he not elevate, he kind of shrunk in the moment, dropped an obvious touchdown pass. And that really had a huge impact in that game. If he catches that pass, they probably beat the Rams that night.
And it's not like we shouldn't have seen this coming. Go back to last year's draft, 31st overall pick, Ricky Pearsall. As soon as that pick comes in, the panic meter starts going crazy. Is it Ayuk or is it Deebo? Who's out the building? Who's going to be gone? And while San Francisco elected to kind of take this one final big swing to maybe win a Super Bowl, although it didn't happen, the writing has been on the wall for a year. Once they re-signed Ayuk and drafted Pearsall, it was okay, Deebo, you're the guy, you're the odd man out, you're the guy out the door. It was just a matter of when was it going to be a trade or release? Who will take that first big step into getting him off the team? But honestly, like Deebo, go to that Rams game, drops the big touchdown. At that moment in itself, forget asking for a trade, forget the financial situation. At that moment, it was so obvious he's no longer the same player he once was, and that's okay. But at that point, he's going to be 29 this year. He's been beaten and broken and giving you everything he's got. And he's been a really good Niner. However, it's time to move on. You now hopefully have two guys that can beat man coverage once Ayuk comes back. You have Jawan Jennings, who had a phenomenal year this year. You're probably going to want to re-sign him for a longer contract. You're going to want to extend George Kittle. Like Deebo Samuel, in a way, is kind of being phased out of the offense, and it's a good thing it's happening.
Where does he wind up? A lot of people have speculated Carolina, but you know what? Carolina is not a destination. I know he's from North Carolina, or he's from South Carolina, and the Panthers are close by. But I think that Deebo wants to be on a good team. I think he understands that he only gets payback if he's on a relevant team and plays big and maybe wins something. And I think ultimately he does care about winning. So I know Baltimore went after him last year. He was wearing an Eagles jersey this week. He was looking, celebrating with A.J. Brown. I bet you anything he either winds up in Baltimore or Philadelphia or Washington. One of those places that's, that where he can win, where he can maybe stick it to the Niners a little bit. I don't think it's not, to me, it's not about money. I think it's about, winning an opportunity and then I also kind of think that there could be some teams that look at Deebo and go, you know what, the 49ers offensive line is horrible. You put him here in Baltimore behind our killer line, he might be better. You put him in Philly behind their killer line, he might be better. I could see some teams thinking that, he's not necessarily done because his age doesn't say he's done. But if you do know NFL football, guys who run through you are done at 28. Guys who run through you are done at 29. That's where he is. I mean, go look at Earl Campbell. Outside of John Riggins, I can't think of a single guy whose game was they ran through people that did anything at the age of 29, and that's where he's at right now. So I kind of think he's done. I really do, but I also think he's going to wind up on a good team. I don't think he's going to be on a bad team.
I would agree with you. And I think a lot of what Deebo does in regards to his age, you have to point to, he's a running back. He's not a receiver. Receivers can play till they're 33, 34 at times. Deebo can't play until he's 33, 34. This is his last maybe big contract when it's all said and done. When you talk about where he may go in 2025, maybe Tampa Bay. I'm not sure exactly what their cap situation is, but if they lose Chris Godwin, they want to be competitive still. I could see them saying, you know what, we have Mike Evans. He's our deep threat. Let's go get the underneath guy and Deebo Samuel, open things up out there with Baker Mayfield and company. I know a lot of people are out there mocking like, oh, Deebo and a pick for a player. The odds that happen are very slim. It usually doesn't happen like that in the NFL, player for player trades. But my hope, and it's probably not going to happen, but my hope is that they keep Deebo after the draft. And there's a team out there that didn't get a receiver, didn't sign one in free agency, and is like, look, we're desperate. We got to get a receiver in here. Whether it is Tampa Bay or somebody else, who knows? Maybe it's the Falcons. I have no idea. The teams that are like, we got to find some weapons. oh, Deebo's out there. He wants out. We'll pay him whatever it is. San Francisco saves, I don't know what it is, like 15 or $10 million this year after a post-June first cut and whatnot. I just think that Deebo, he only probably has 1 or 2 years left. He has to maximize that. And if he wants to set himself up for a Super Bowl, maybe, I don't think many teams that are going to be vying for a Lombardi trophy are even going to want Deebo Samuel. That's the issue to me. His destination is not a team that's going to reciprocate for him. It's going to be teams like the Jets, teams like, I don't know, the Colts, teams like the Saints, like maybe the Giants if they get Shadur Sanders. Like, it's not going to be really competitive teams that say, I got to get Deebo Samuel.
I think that's a good point. It's okay. So then what also makes this kind of complicated, and what you're suggesting there, though, Sterling, means that they would pay that big roster bonus in March.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to happen. It seems like they're going to separate before that, but you never know.
Yeah.
And you also never know about their interest in getting back compensation. Now, I've said this a few times. I really believe that the 49ers are run by a three-headed monster, and all three guys are judged independently by Jed York. And this is my belief. I think Parag is judged by the contracts, how they get done, at what rate, what level are the Niners spending. The cap is his domain. I think Lynch is about trades and draft picks. And I think Kyle's about W's, wins and losses. And I really believe that, John may want to trade Deebo because he doesn't want to hand him over for nothing. And he wants to have something coming back. But as you stated, and as I've stated too, I don't believe that he's going to fetch anything more than, a mid to late day 3 draft choice. That being said, the other thing that complicates this is that the 49ers need him. They don't need him, but they need a receiver.
Right.
And Ayuk's out for, I don't know how long. I mean, that's the other question. How long do you think Ayuk's out for? He tore the MCL, the ACL, the meniscus. I think he's gone for sure until at least Thanksgiving. And I don't even know what you can expect to get from him. I think he'll be diminished. I mean, that injury was very serious. He wasn't the same player last year that he was 2 years ago. I think it's very safe to say that he's probably not going to be the same player next year that he even was this year. So now we're talking about multiple steps down from the apex of his career. I don't know can the Niners win the Super Bowl next year with a wide receiver core of Ayuk off the injury, JJ, Pearsall, and Cowing? I don't think so, man. I really don't think so. So I think it's going to take – I do think they should move off of Deebo. I do think they will move off of Deebo, but I also think they're going to have to go find a receiver. Now, it could be in a trade, it could be in the draft, or it could be in free agency. Those are the three options. What do you have anybody that you think? I mean, there was an article today written, that was talking about Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper had a terrible year this last year. Had a 15% drop rate, was like the worst of his career. I don't know about Amari Cooper. Other people have said Devontae Adams. I don't know. To me, that he is not the receiver that they need. I mean, they need a receiver that complements what they have. And what they have are guys that can move the chain. So what they really need is they need a guy who can really get downfield and make big plays. And there are a couple guys like that in free agency, but they're not big stars. They're Rondale Moore, they're Tutu Atwell, they're McCole Hardman types. And I could see them going for a receiver like that because that's the receiver that they don't have and would round out their room. But people are talking big names like Amari Cooper and Devontae Adams and T. Higgins and of course, the draft. What if T-Mac, Tetaroa McMillan drops in their lap? And we'll do a little mock before we get out of here. But what do you think, Sterling? I mean, if they move off of Deebo, are you with me that they have to have a significant receiver coming in? And then if so, who do you like? Who do you want?
I would agree that if they trade or release Deebo Samuel, you have to find whether it's like another bona fide number 2 receiver or starting caliber guy or someone you can just trust to start, for a month or two, maybe once Ayuk comes back, which I'm hoping. I think he got hurt October 22nd against the Chiefs. I'm hoping it's around early November once he's back, but post ACLs, it usually takes one whole year anyways to get back to who they once were, and who knows, right? That said, I think there's a player out there that was, I guess, rumored to be tied to them in at the trade deadline last year. I think Darius Slayton makes a lot of sense for them. He's got the speed. He can stretch the field. He's not going to, be Amari Cooper in regards to his ability to play towards the sidelines or whatnot, but he's also going to be a heck of a lot cheaper. And I think for a team that probably wants to pay a player for 1 to 2 years at a pretty cheap rate, I think Slayton makes a lot of sense. He's in his, mid to late 20s. He's not going to, not going to cost you $10 million a year, because when I see these big names like Devontae Adams and T. Higgins, I think, is San Francisco really going to pay another wide receiver 15, 20, $30 million? T. Higgins wants to get paid. Devontae Adams, for whatever his contract looks like post-release, he's going to want to get paid. I know he's an NorCal guy and all that stuff at Fresno State, but he's going to want money. San Francisco is already paying Ayuk $30 million per year, and Pierce was a first-round pick. I have a really hard time believing that they're not going to treat this anything, or they're going to treat this similar to how they treat that third cornerback. Cheap veteran, $6 to $8 million, and call it a day and hope it works. I think that is the blueprint for what they're going to do, and I think Slayton fits that a lot for this offense.
That's a great name. Darius Slayton is a big receiver, but he also runs 4.33, and they got to have somebody. I asked Kyle this question probably 4 times in the last 2 or 3 years, which is how important is it to have one receiver on your roster who will take the top off the defense and kind of threatens deep? And he's like, everybody in this league knows how fast everybody else is. So he said it's vitally important as a play caller. Offensive football is about creating space. Defensive football is about closing that whole space down. So if you have Tutu Atwell, he can run right on by, Mooney Ward. Well, guess what? You can go up top, and that's what the Rams did against Mooney Ward, and Tutu ran right on by him. So I definitely think Slayton's interesting because he is a big-bodied receiver, but he also has great speed. And he's been on such a bad offensive team that if you put him on the Niners, you know what? Maybe around the Niners and their receivers and their receiver coach and maybe he would bust out. Maybe he would have a career type year. It's definitely to me, he's on the short list. He's definitely on the short list because he checks all those boxes. Another
What do you
topic,
think about his former teammate, though? Like,
who's that?
I know it's an underrated signing and probably not going to mean anything, but Isaiah Hodgins is
Isaiah Hodgins. I love Isaiah Hodgins.
I went to high school with him. He was a sophomore when I was a junior. Like, I know Berean? Isaiah Hodgins. Yep.
Okay. In which Berean Christian is a Christian high school in the East Bay. It's not known for its sports in any way, shape, or form, but Isaiah Hodgins went there and then did he go to Cal first and then Oregon State?
I don't know, but I know he was Oregon State for about 2 or 3 years, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the addition of Hodgins. Why? Because he's a possession receiver, but he's 6'3", 6'4", with long arms and great hands. To me, if I'm going to have a relatively slow possession receiver, I don't want him to be the size of Ronnie Bell. So the fact that Ronnie Bell, they said goodbye to Ronnie Bell and they kind of gave his spot to Hodgins. I like Hodgins a whole lot better. I think Hodgins is going to make the Niners. I think he's going to be a red zone threat. You can throw the ball up to him. He can run all the routes. He's not slow. He's not a burner per se, but he's not slow, and he's got great height and great ball skills. So to me, Isaiah Hodgins is nice. I think that's a good ad.
Yeah, I think that for Hodgins, he's kind of, the Giants toy with him a lot. He was a starter, then he wasn't, and the Giants are a mess. But to me, like, him and Russell Gage are like floor raisers. And I think that in a room where Ayuk's going to be out for a handful of months, Deebo's probably gone, like, you have to have floor raisers on your offense and in the receiver room. So I think that Gage, Hodgins, veteran guys, even Tariq Owens, I don't think all those guys make the team, but they certainly give you depth, which at this point in time, you need a lot of depth knowing you don't have your top 2 guys probably next year for like 2-3 months, if at all.
Yeah, I mean, none of those guys are burners, right? Tariq Owens is not a burner. Trent Taylor is who's on their, he's on their roster still in the offseason. He's not a burner. Gage, not a burner. Hodgins, not a burner. Then you go look at Ayuk. Definitely, he's their deep threat, but he's coming off of major injuries. JJ runs 4.7. Deebo was never a burner. Pearsall is more of like a continuity piece. Every third and sixth pass he'll catch. Conley's a free agent. So the only guy at all on this team that can get deep is Cowing, and he needs to put on 10 to 12 pounds of muscle and kind of reestablish who he is. He's just too small, too weak. He couldn't even hold his feet half the time. So, they need a vertical guy. Is there a receiver in the draft that you like? Because it's an interesting draft, isn't it? I mean, there's McMillan who could go top 10. There's Luther Burden from Missouri. And then it's like, I like Trey Harris from Ole Miss, but this is not. If you're looking for a Deebo replacement, Savion Williams from TCU is
That's the guy
not built the same, but he played Wildcat quarterback. He's either going to be, we're going to find out about him in 3 weeks, right? If he goes to Indy and he runs a blistering 40, he's probably going to go in the third round. But if he goes to Indy and just runs a pedestrian 40, he could go in the fifth or sixth round. But I love him, and to me, he's really, really physical. I also love Ricky White the third. I've been talking to him up because this guy blocked 4 punts this year for UNLV. He blocked more punts individually than any FBS team did all season long, and the Niners have been a circus on special teams. If you could have a receiver who's like last on your depth chart that somehow could block 2 kicks over the course of the year, I mean, that right there would be, justify his place on the roster. So remember that name, probably 4th round, 5th round, Ricky White, the third from Vegas.
I also think, Jalen Noel from Iowa State's been brought up a lot recently because the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl and stuff like that.
They met him there, separator. Right?
Yeah, and so he's excellent punt returner. He had 23 explosive catches last year, which is 15 plus yards. He had 42 receiving first downs last year, over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. He isn't the biggest guy. He's 5'11", but when you talk about wanting that guy that can separate, has a long speed, I don't know what exactly his draft stock may be as of February 13th, but I think that a player like Jalen Noel, I'm sure, is certainly on Kyle Shanahan's radar going into April's draft.
Yeah, Iowa State had 2 receivers this year, Noel and Higgins, and they both caught like 80 or 90 balls, and they both had like 8 or 9 touchdowns. I mean, it was a really good year for both those guys. Higgins is the big guy who's like 6'4", 215, and Noel's the smaller guy. But the Niners clearly like Noel, and he's a guy who can run routes. He's got good hands. He's quicker than you think. One of the things I thought Jeremy Fowler had an interesting article yesterday on ESPN.com about the different tiers of teams around the league. And he put the Niners in a tier that also includes Dallas, Atlanta, and Indy. And just right off the chute, I was like, what? There's now grouped with Dallas, who's just a tire fire run by an idiot oil man and his idiot kid. You got the Falcons. What's that?
Jerry Jones is an actor now, apparently, too.
Yeah. Atlanta, I mean, I don't know. Indy seems like they've just lost. I mean, I don't know if I would put the Niners with those other 3 teams, but he listed the Niners as stuck in the middle. But then he also kind of hedged and said, but these teams are a move or 2 away from Super Bowl contention. So he kind of left himself kind of an open, just, because, I mean, heck, we all know every team is going to make a move or 2. And then you could always say, well, yeah, I had them stuck in the middle, but man, they made a couple moves, and everybody's going to make a couple moves between now and camp, But he does hit on something that I think is kind of an interesting thought, which is, when you hear, hey, this team's in middle ground. That's almost like an NBA thing, right? It's like you're good enough to not get the top lottery pick, but you're bad enough to not make the playoffs or not make the play in.
Yeah,
and you get stuck. Yeah, you get stuck in that what we call NBA middle ground. and you just never get out of it. And there's teams that never can graduate out of NBA middle ground. They're never good enough to get the best players out of college, and they're never good enough to really contend for a title. The Niners, are they, in your mind, in this middle ground? Because to me, I look at their roster and I think they badly need an injection they need a volume draft. They need their version of Bill Walsh's 86 draft where he got 8 starters. I counted all kinds of needs on this team. I'm counting like 8 on offense, 8 on defense, and 2 on special teams. I mean, they literally, need 16, 17, 18 players to be added. They don't all have to be draft picks. Some could be free agents and whatnot. But I just hear so many people in the fan base who were go get Max Crosby, go get Myles Garrett, go get this guy, go get that guy, go get Joey Bosa, go get. And it's like, I understand because they know those names. So I'm not ripping them because those are the names they know. But I don't know that that's what the Niners need right now. I don't know that the Niners are one move away from the Eagles. I don't think so. I kind of tend to think that they aren't one player away. And so when people are going Myles Garrett, I'm like everybody else. I'm thinking of Bosa on one side and Garrett on the other, and wow, good luck blocking that. But when I really start thinking about it, I'm like, no, because like I was looking at what it took to get Khalil Mack. It took 2 number ones and like 4 or 5 other picks. I mean, the Niners don't want, I've heard people suggest, they ought to get Myles Garrett. Just give them the 11th pick. Like, wait a second. Now they're just going to take 1 pick for Myles Garrett. From what I'm hearing, the Raiders want a bounty of picks if they're going to move Crosby, and the Browns don't even want to move Garrett and would only move Garrett if they just get overwhelmed, and they're not going to get overwhelmed by a 1 pick offer. So I don't know. Personally, I don't think that's, even though I love Myles Garrett, I love Max Crosby, and I'd love to see him opposite Bosa. I don't think the Niners are one guy away, and that's not how I'd play my hand. I see a great defensive line draft, and I'd rather invest 4 or 5 picks in the defensive line in different rounds than trade 4 or 5 picks for Myles Garrett. Where are you on this?
The example I would use is that if there is this San Francisco 49ers iceberg, it's really big above the water. And it's massive. It's Christian McCaffrey, it's Brock Purdy, it's Brandon Ayuk, it's Pearsall, it's Bosa, it's Warner, it's all these stars that we know, guys that are established that you think, wow, there's 5 or 6, really good players that can carry you to a playoff win, if not more. But as soon as you get under the water, it's really thin. And you're like, wait a minute, like there is no cornerstones, there's no fortification, like there is, not to say no substance, there just really isn't much left under the hood, if you will. And I think for San Francisco, last year's draft was you had to have it. Mustafa, Garendo, Pearsall. You hope Bethune can come along, and you like Pooney obviously as well. But you got to have about 4 or 5, I think, not starters, but like legitimate players in this year's draft. They had like 9 or 10 picks this year, I believe. So like they really, trading 11 for Myles Garrett's not going to get it done. They have to improve this team's floor, build back the trenches, literally and figuratively, because this team, although at the top is built for a deep playoff run, once you really take a magnifying glass to the roster, you're kind of like, I'm not too sure if this team can hang with, say, Philadelphia or Kansas City. We saw this year. Kansas City walked into San Francisco and boat raced them, and it was like they are far away. Now, there's context as to why Purdy threw about 3 or 4 picks in that game. However, this team, I think, is near playoff contention. They have the stars to get to the playoffs. But you want to talk about winning a Lombardi trophy, you got to have about 4 or 5 of these picks hit this year and be instant impact players for you in 2025.
Yeah, no, there's no question. There's no question about it. It really is. It's going to be a very interesting offseason, I think. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting offseason for a lot of reasons. I want to play this one cut about Brock Purdy. This, to me, was really interesting about Brock Purdy. And there's been a couple different stories out on Purdy in the last week or so. But this, I don't know if you caught this, but this was Albert Breer on with Rich Eisen, and I thought this was a really good soundbite. Listen to Breer, and I think Breer is all over it. I think Breer's pretty dialed in. Here's Breer with Rich Eisen discussing the Purdy contract.
The number that Brock Purdy's annual salary begins with next year is
a 4 or a 5. Is that what you're gonna ask me?
Oh, it could be a 6. Could be a 6.
I'd say a 5. I'd say a 5.
Okay.
I think they're gonna find. I think they're gonna find a middle ground. I think he's gonna wind up not being the highest paid. But I think one thing you can do for a quarterback is you can exchange. You can exchange the raw dollars for maybe an extra year of guarantees where you can give him the comfort level that you are going to be our quarterback, And I think maybe the model's the Jared Goff deal, like where, like if you're the Niners, you can look at him with a straight face and you can say, we think he can bring to our team what Jared Goff brings to the Lions, And look, I know this, this thing could be simple. It could wind up becoming really complicated. We'll see. The Niners want Brock Purdy to be their quarterback. Kyle Shanahan loves Brock Purdy. And the idea of building around Brock Purdy is something that really appeals to them. And they don't want to sink to the bottom of the league and have to rebuild around somebody else. And they've already done the Trey Lance thing. And so I think they're going to find a way to get it done. And the team's going to look different around him next year. And they're going to have to deal with some different challenges having a quarterback at the top of the market on their books. But they did deal with that once with Jimmy Garoppolo. And they've got tough decisions to make on guys like Deebo Samuel, who I think is gone, and they'll have some, they'll have some free agents that they're going to have that they really like that they'll have to probably let go of, like, Charvarius Ward, and they're going to have to cut some veteran players like maybe a Javon Hargrave. I do think that Brock Purdy is going to be part of the equation, though.
Okay, so there's Breer, and Sterling. It's interesting. When you listen to that soundbite the first time, you're like, oh, he just sounds kind of easy breezy, and he's kind of discussing it all. When you go back and listen to it again, he's got a lot of real specifics in this thing, which makes you think that somebody spilled their guts to him. Like he either talked to Kyle Strongen or maybe he talked to the Niners, because he had a lot of very specific stuff. For example, he says that the AAV is going to be in the $50 million range, but it won't be in the $60 million range, which definitely plays along with Diana Rossini's Super Bowl week report of it's going to sit between 55 and 60 million. There's also a report, I believe, from Barrows or Kawakami tonight saying that it won't be $60 million. So in other words, what Breer said there, the Niner beat writers and media are now saying here, which is that they're going to get a deal done, but it's not going to set new records. It's not going to be he's not going to be the highest paid quarterback in the league. And that's what Breer basically said there. And that's what Barrows and Kawakami are saying. He also said, I think they'll find middle ground. I think he won't be the highest paid quarterback. And then he says, you know what? He actually names Jared Goff. And he's like, I think it's going to be kind of like a Jared Goff deal. And it's like, you don't just say that. You don't just think of one guy. I think it's going to be a Jared Goff deal. Well, wait a second. Why? Somebody said to him it's going to be a Jared Goff deal. So I looked up Jared Goff's deal, and he says, Niners want Purdy to be their quarterback, and Shanahan loves Purdy. I do find it interesting, too, that Shanahan, without anybody prodding him, said Brock Purdy, Shanahan wants Brock Purdy to be the only quarterback that he has here the rest of his time here. Yeah. And I almost get the feeling that maybe Jed said to, Kyle and John, hey, look, you got 2 or 3 years and that's it. And we got to show some progress here towards a Super Bowl, or that's going to be it. We're going to probably go in a different direction. I don't know that that's the case, but I could picture that, even though he's publicly been totally, in total support of the regime. Andy Reid doesn't, Andy Reid got 13 years and then they fired him. If Kyle got 3 more years, it would be year 9, 10, and 11. So he's kind of getting in that, it's time to S or get off the pot kind of a situation. But then he also says, I think Deebo's gone, very specific. He said they may need to cut some vets, and he named Hargrave, and that one's already kind of been known because the Niners kind of already announced that they're going to cut him post June 1st. But I wanted to look at the Goff deal And the Goff deal signed in May of 2024 was 4 years, $212 million. And if you adjust for inflation, Purdy's AAV for the, and the cap's going up, by the way, from 255.4 million not this year to 272.5 million next year. So if you do the math and extrapolate the cap going up that amount and then adjust for inflation and say he's getting the Goff deal, then Purdy's AAV would be 56.4 million. Bingo. That's it. There it is. I don't think he's saying Goff because for the hell of it. I think he's saying Goff because somebody told him that. And for Diana Rossini to say it's between 55 and 60, 56.4 is between 55 and 60. And for Tim Kawakami and Matt Barrows to say it won't be 60, well, 56.4 is not 60. Do you see what I'm saying? And then I'm just looking at the other numbers on the Goff deal. APY or the AAV is 53 million for him, so 56.4 for Purdy. Guaranteed at signing, Goff got 113.6 million. I could see Purdy getting very close to that. Very, very close to that. Total guarantees on the Goff deal is 170 million. I think the total guarantees on the Purdy deal is going to be about 175. I've been talking about that for a few weeks. The contract value of 212 was 13th. It was not the top of the league. Purdy's would not be the top of the league either. And the percentage of the cap at signing for Goff was 20.7, which was 13th in the NFL. I think the Niners want to keep that under 22% because that's kind of the number that shows that you can't really win with a quarterback that makes more. So what do you think? I mean, isn't it Breer either is a genius or he's got great sources? Which one do you think it is?
Well, first, that was incredible math there. Like, you had me captivated the entire time you were talking about the contract. But I think Breer's spot on. I think when you talk about and you hear about the numbers being thrown out there, $55 million, I believe, if I'm correct, Brock's 56, whatever you said, $1 million.
56.4, yeah.
Per year, that would make him, I believe, the second highest paid quarterback above Burrow, above Lawrence, above the guys, above Tua. Like, it's a contract that, the per year average, the APY usually gets tossed out there like it actually matters, although it doesn't. Like, that gets Purdy's name, number 2, right behind Dak Prescott. It gets his name where he wants it to be. But I think it makes the most sense. I've never been someone that believes that, Purdy was going to outbid Dak Prescott's contract. I know Over the Cap had him projected at $60.1 million, which whatever, like we're doing the 0.1 game, I guess. Like Brock's not going to get 60 than one penny to make it a point, but I think it makes San Francisco comfortable. But to your point about Kyle, when he said that about, Brock's the only quarterback I want to be here with me. And I was like, okay, if it doesn't work out, like you are tying yourself to this quarterback, which that's what happens when you get 3 chances to get a starting quarterback as your franchise guy for a long time. But man, like I think 56 makes the most sense. It gives Brock what he wants. It keeps San Francisco in a comfortable range. The great thing about that is that, once eventually it'll be a while from now, but once Jaden Daniels gets paid, once other quarterbacks get paid, Caleb Williams gets paid, Drake May gets paid, Brock will be the 10th highest paid quarterback again, and no one will care. And it's like, all right, like the same thing happened with Jimmy, albeit Jimmy was more limited than Brock was. It was always the highest paid quarterback, and in 2 weeks' time, he was 13th. And you're like, oh, it's not that bad anymore.
Seriously. Well, I mean, and that's the way all these deals work, right? At first, you're like, but here's the weird thing about it. Why is it that every quarterback has to be the record-setting quarterback? I mean, was Jimmy Garoppolo the best quarterback in football? Hell no. Is Brock Purdy the best quarterback in football? Hell no. So why should these guys ever, even if other guys' contracts will pass them up eventually, why should the Niners ever pay Brock Purdy, top of the – he's not the best quarterback in football. To me, it's nonsense that he should be making the most. But I also will push back on the people who are like, give him $30 million and tell him to take a hike. Franchise him and make him earn it. Make him earn it? Who's done more? The guy took you to a Super Bowl and an NFC Championship game in his first 2 years. You took away 38 touchdowns from his top 3 guys from last year to this year, and he still was pretty damn good for a lot of the year. Now, he did continue to drive the ball down the field without any deep threat, and he ran into some second half interceptions, and he's got to eradicate that. But outside of that, I look at that as just a guy trying to make a play, and I don't necessarily hold it against him. I would like to see him be a little bit more careful with the football, because I don't know if you noticed, but Philly was 13-1 in the playoffs turnover ratio. They took away the ball 13 times. They gave it away once. If you want to win games, you have to win the turnover battle. I believe almost every single team that played in the playoffs, the team that won the turnover battle almost without fail won the game. So
makes sense.
Turnovers are vitally important. You know what I mean? We can talk about all these other things, but Brock's got to take better care of the football. I mean, I believe in Brock. I'm a believer. You know that. Everybody knows that. But he's got to take better care of the football. He's got to take better care of the football. And I said to Shanahan, hey, he's super aggressive, and I think I may have said over aggressive. And Shanahan pushed back. He's like, I don't think so. I don't think he's over aggressive. And this was on the heels of the pass to JJ against the Rams, where he had three guys. The All-22 showed three guys underneath, and the Rams saying, we're taking away the deep ball, and Brock saying, screw it, I'm going down the field. With a rusher in his face, and he never saw the coverage. That's too aggressive. It was first down. You cannot make that mistake on first down. That's a last play of the game. The clock's going to hit 0, or it's fourth down. Then you take your all or nothing chance. You don't take an all or nothing chance with your season on the line and three guys open underneath, and the defender's saying we're not giving away the deep ball, and you're like, I'm going there. No, that's over aggressive. And Shanahan can defend him all he wants. The film sides with me, and would say he was over aggressive there. So.
Which the good thing about Brock is that when he had all of his guys out there, he had Ayuk, he had Deebo, he had Kittle, he had Christian McCaffrey, he was far more comfortable and far more careful with the football. He wasn't throwing 12, 13 picks. It was like 6. I think that, once you get your guys out there, the guys that are there through OTAs and training camp, the guys you trust to be open, you can even go back to 2022, I believe, or maybe it was 2023 in Minnesota. Brock throws the football late in the game that gets picked off. He's screaming at McLeod, you got to get here, because you don't trust the guys out there. That wasn't Ayuk and wasn't JJ and wasn't Deebo. So you like to believe that once he has his guys back, the guys that are there the entire time, the entire offseason program that he trusts, those interceptions will go down. The necessity to be aggressive downfield when it doesn't really matter that much, or you shouldn't be, will go down. That the interceptions will also decrease, and you'll win more football games because of that. However, on the defensive side, because both things, you got to even itself out. The defense also has to get takeaways too. It didn't get any last year, it felt like, under Nick Sorensen. So I know Brock gets some hate for that and whatnot, and he's not taking a Baker Mayfield style contract. He's earned much, much more than Baker ever has. That said, you want to lower your turnovers, but also increase your takeaways. It starts with Brock, but also that defense has to get itself together in 2025 under Robert Saleh.
I haven't even asked you, but what do you think of the new coordinators? The Niners have, like Philly last year, right? Philly had a bad year, got bounced by Tampa. Vic Fangio rolls in, Kellen Moore rolls in. They have 2 new coordinators. Niners actually have 3 new coordinators. You got a new special teams coordinator who came from the Jets with Saleh. You got Saleh stepping in for Sorensen, and you've got a new offensive coordinator as well in is it Clay Kubiak or Clint?
I believe so. Yeah.
Or Clay. One's in Seattle, one's with the Niners, but I think Clay might be with the Niners. But what's your thought on the new coordinators? Do you? I don't really have that much knowledge of the special teams coordinator, but when you're as bad as the Niners have been on special teams, all coordinators look pretty good by comparison.
I think it's really hard not to be excited about Robert Saleh coming back. I mean, how could you not be? I know there are better names out there. I myself wanted Dennis Allen. And so I get that. But Saleh knows this team. He knows this defense, albeit the personnel's different on the defensive side of the football. He just makes Kyle feel comfortable. He'll be able to push back during meetings and kind of get the best out of Kyle and vice versa. I think this team didn't have that with Steve Wilks. Kyle undoubtedly ran over Nick Sorensen last year as well. So I think that getting Saleh back in the building, back in meetings, will ultimately make Kyle better. It also it also allows Kyle to be hands off with the defense. And I think the same thing goes for special teams. Although Kyle is the head coach, he'll be involved in things no matter what. Brant Boyer, 13 years in the NFL. He was an assistant with the Colts in 2012, been with the Jets since 2016. He survived 3 different regime changes. So you can say when new GMs, new head coaches are coming in, they're saying, nope, that guy needs to stay here. He's that good at his football. So I like Brant Boyer a lot. I think he brings a lot of Robert Saleh tendencies to special teams, which is exactly what you want. A lot of those things go hand in hand. So a lot of similar players, same players. With the Jets as their special teams coordinator, ranked inside the top 10 twice. If you want to go to DVOA, they have never ranked below 5th since 2019. Like they've been a solid button-up unit ever since Boyer's been there. And then obviously Kubiak was here last year. I don't know if they've made the promotion official just yet. I'm not sure if they've actually met the Rooney Rule requirements, but I mean, continuity's back, which is a big thing for Kyle Shanahan.
No doubt. No doubt. Matt Barrows said today that he believes the 49ers will eventually release Dre Greenlaw with a June 1st release. This really makes me upset because I'm a huge Dre Greenlaw fan, and I really believe that the 49ers need to keep him just because I think it's important that you have a couple guys in the room that are examples of your culture. And to me, Dre Greenlaw is the biggest example of the Niners culture. When I say that, what I mean is just that I think he plays the way they want to play. He's fast, he's physical, he's violent, and he is a tone-setting player. I was hoping they could re-sign him. To me, it's like I put him in the Jimmy Ward category. Jimmy Ward covered like a corner, hit like a linebacker. He was very, very valuable. He did tons for the Niners. He was one of their emotional leaders. He walked in free agency for $6 million on a one-year deal. They never should have let him walk out. They've missed him ever since. Now, if it's DJ Jones and you got a good player and Denver wants to pay him $30 million and pay him like he's a great player, then you know what? You bite the bullet and you're like, it sucks. This is modern day NFL. But when you have a player that's as valuable as Greenlaw, and if he doesn't get a big money multi-year deal, if it's just 1 year, $6 million somewhere, and I have a hard time believing he's going to get more than that, I want to bring him back. I want to keep this guy. I want them to draft 2 or 3 young linebackers, and I want those young linebackers to see the way that Dre Greenlaw plays and say that's how it's done. And I think that's vitally important to them going forward, to pass down. They've been to a Super Bowl. They've been to 2 Super Bowls. You can't get nothing out of your Super Bowl runs. If you start getting rid of all your tone-setting players, you're not going to pass your the tempo that you want and the energy that you want along to your young players. So I'm okay with Fonga moving. I'm okay with Mooney Ward leaving. I'm okay with Hargrave leaving. But I say re-sign Greenlaw. Nothing crazy, but if it's a 1-year deal, bring this guy back. Where are you on the Niner free agents? Do they all have to go, or do you want to see Dre come back?
Yeah, I think, Greenlaw's an impending free agent. So I think, March 12th, I think, is the new league year. So he'll hit the open market, I believe, on that day. But Hufanga can go. I think the market prices himself out. I think teams like the Chargers, the Rams, the Colts, all those safety needy teams make sense. I could see him going back to SoCal where he went to USC for his collegiate years. That also makes sense to me. Hargrave can go. Mooney Ward can go. He seems pretty adamant he's never going to play in California again, barring as a visitor, which makes sense knowing what he went through this year. That said, I do wonder if Deebo Samuel is gone, if Hufanga is gone, and more importantly, if Dre Greenlaw is gone. That's 3 tone-setting players, albeit Deebo and Greenlaw are much more than Hufanga. I do wonder, the heart and soul of your team is kind of gone. And you have to have guys step up for sure, but I don't know if San Francisco has those guys to replace them in the immediate. So I do wonder that if you lose Dre Greenlaw and Deebo Samuel in the exact same offseason, they're going to miss a lot of their punch. They're going to miss a lot of their dog on offense and defense, and they'll win plenty of games next year, and they'll bounce back to a certain degree. But I think for Dre, a 1 year, $6 million deal, 1 year, $8 million deal, load that thing up with incentives. If he plays great, he earns it. Awesome. But I have a hard time believing a team like Washington or Atlanta is going to give Dre Greenlaw a $13-14 million per year contract and say, be the guy, wear the green dot and move on.
I wonder, it's going to be interesting because, there's so many people that have seen Dre Greenlaw and know what he's about. And I wonder if somebody's just going to say, you know what, this guy's an animal, we need to get him. Or if they're going to say this guy's hurt and broken down and we need to steer clear of him. But it's going to be interesting. And it sounds like he's on his way out. I hope it's not the case because he really does mean a lot.
I do wonder, though.
Oh, go ahead.
That, and I hate saying this and putting it out there, the Chiefs, to me, make a lot of sense for Dre Greenlaw. They have under $1 million in cap space. And I know it's terrible, and I hate it too. But Nick Bolton's a free agent. There's rumors they want to trade Drew Tranquill this offseason because he has a $5.5 million that they can utilize post June 1st. I do wonder that if a team wants to pay Dre Greenlaw that can utilize the incentive-based stuff and give him more money than he may get in San Francisco and be the guy, the Chiefs to me is like this underdog, dark horse, like please don't go there kind of team, but I would not be shocked to see Dre Greenlaw go to Kansas City.
God, that's the last thing I want to see.
Or even Tennessee.
Actually, the last thing I want to see is him in Philly. I don't want to see him in Philly. And I have a feeling that Philly could come calling just because he's such a good player. They seem like, like almost like they'd be willing to play him part-time just to have him, Al Sacco, the host of the No Huddle podcast, I had him on recently, and he also is a contributor. He's a contributor over at 49er Web Zone. He's got a really good article up today, and I didn't realize this. I think like, I'm aware of every Niner thing, but I really was not aware of this one. Since 2020, the 49ers have only drafted 4 defensive linemen. That's amazing. They've drafted 4 defensive linemen in the last 5 drafts combined. And those 4 guys are Javon Kinlaw, Drake Jackson, Kalia Davis, and Robert Beal Jr.
Robert Beal, yeah.
And those 4 guys have combined for 13 sacks in 10 combined seasons with the Niners. That's not very many. And then I'm looking at this list, and if you read the article, he's like, and the Kinlaw miss led to them going after Hargrave, and then they paid Hargrave $40 million, and he gave him 22 games and 9 sacks. And then he's like, and then the Drake Jackson second-round miss led to them going after Chase Young, and he got 3.5 sacks in 12 games, dogged it in the championship game, and then he walks away in free agency. And then Al made the point that the Niners this last year just said, we're going to do it all in the free agency. And they went for Floyd and Collins and Elliott and Gross Matos. And the result was a disaster. The Niners defense was horrible. They gave up 436 points, the most points they've allowed on defense since 2016. And then he made the comparison that look at the Eagles by comparison. They drafted 6 defensive linemen since 2021. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Jalix Hunt, Moro Ajomo, Nolan Smith, and Milton Williams. All 6 played key roles in their 18-point victory on Super Bowl Sunday over the Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. So I think he makes the point that it is time, it is beyond time for the 49ers to start investing draft choices in their defensive line. Their defensive line was the best in football a couple years ago. They had 2 whole lines. They had guys off the bench that could start for other teams. Now it's like they need to replace 3/4 of their starting line, and none of the guys on the bench are any good at all. The only guys in that room I think are good are Nick Bosa and Evan Anderson. Everybody else can tuck tail and beat it as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I don't like any of those guys. I don't think any of these guys can play. They badly need to invest in the defensive line, but they also badly need to invest in the offensive line, and they badly need to invest in the linebacking core, and they badly need a free safety. And you know what I'm saying? They've got a lot of needs here. Is D-line the primary spot for you, or is O-line in front of D-line? Where do you rank these needs, or how do you view this?
Well, Shanahan got overzealous the last couple of years and was just buying weapons and paying offensive weapons and kind of got blinded by, oh my goodness, I have all these shiny toys, but you don't have a door to put the like what's going on here? Like you don't have the trenches, you don't have the offensive line to even make the offense run. Aaron Banks, I think, was terrible last year. Brendel was terrible last year. McKivitz was McKivitz. It's how he always has been. He's average, which is fine, but when that's your third best offensive lineman, you're in a disaster place for the San Francisco 49ers. That said, I think with Saleh returning, there was going to be a recalibration to defensive line. You look back, I believe it was 2021 when it was like Arden Key and Charles Omenihu and Bosa and Armstead and Samson Ebukam. And again, like you said, they had two legit defensive line groups. I think we'll see a return to that. I'm not sure how much money they'll spend on free agency. It feels like they want to get younger. Thankfully, this is the deepest defensive tackle class we've seen in like a decade. Now you got to draft the right guys, but I think San Francisco is far too comfortable with their offensive line, unfortunately. Thus, they will go on the defensive side and try to give Saleh everything he needs to succeed for maybe 1, hopefully 2 years.
You want to move? Do you want to bring Banks back, or do you want to let him walk?
I would let Banks walk. I know he was good enough in 2022 and 23. I just don't think he was good this year. And there was times there's times Saubert and him are running into each other on plays against Kansas City. And you're like, oh my gosh, like they're not picking up stunts. I would not be shocked to watch Kyle Shanahan trot out Trent Williams and then Ben Barch and Brendel and Pooney and McKivitz and Burford's the backup left guard and Hennessy's the backup center with Drake Nugent. And you're like, okay, how does this thing look? I have a hard time buying into the fact that they're going to spend big or even draft highly an offensive lineman in this draft.
Let's hit a couple of these starred chats. We got this one from Verniner. He says, new member. There you go. 49er Media. Nice, Isaiah Hodgins just went to Oregon State. Okay, I thought he started at Cal. Verniner says, Garrett Wilson trade and Drew Dahlman free agent is the perfect offseason. Man, Garrett Wilson would be the receiver that I would try to get. I mean, I don't know if Garrett Wilson's available, but that's the guy. I'd be calling the new general manager of the Jets and just being like, what do you want? What do you want? I don't want to trade you the 11th pick, but outside of the 11th pick, what do you want? Because Garrett Wilson is exactly what the Niners need. He's a 4.38 route running marvel who has the speed that would be a difference maker, for the Niners. I think he would complement the other guys really well. I like him a lot more than I like the idea of Amari Cooper or T. Higgins in free agency or really any of these guys in the draft. I like Garrett Wilson. And I love Drew Dahlman too. If I could, the Niners have to get better at running the ball at the point of attack. Yeah. And Drew Dahlman, the most disturbing part of the season to me was every single time I asked Chris Forster about Jake Brendel, he's like, I love him. He's great. He's like, finally, I'm like, I'm starting to get pissed off. I'm like, Chris, what does Jake Brendel do that these other guys don't do? And he's like, oh, he does like 7 things. And I'm like, oh God, he does this. He pass protects. Yeah, his pass protection, his hand usage, his this, is that. It's like, well, then why? Maybe you ought to call somebody at Pro Football Focus and talk to them because they think he's horseshit. I mean, absolutely garbage. They're listing him as worse than like every starting center in football and like 3 guys who back up. So I don't, I'm not sure. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? I mean, if let me just say this: if Brendel's awesome and Juice is a Pro Bowler, why in the hell can't you run the ball in the low red zone? If you have an awesome center and an awesome Pro Bowl fullback, then why can't you get a yard? Why is Kyle Shanahan calling passing plays on 2nd and goal from the 4 and 3rd and goal from the 4? And then on 4th and goal from the 4, he's kicking a field goal and in games that don't matter. I mean, he clearly doesn't believe that he has the tools to run in the low red zone. So there's not a lot of ambiguity about this. It's like it's either the center, the guard, the fullback, or the running back. And I got no problems replacing all of them along the way. I don't, to me, I can't listen to the 49ers anymore sing the praises of Jake Brendel. It just, and nothing against Brendel. He's a nice guy, though he hates me because now I've just been burying him for the last year because I don't give a damn. I really don't care. I don't care. I'm going to speak the truth. And if that means that I get stank eye in the locker room, so be it. You want to stare at me and look like an idiot? Go ahead, stare at me and look like an idiot. You're the one who's playing badly. I'm the one who's noticing. Okay. I don't know what else to say about it. I don't know. That to me is what's the most frustrating thing is like, hey, you talk to Kyle this year. Sorensen's doing a hell of a job. And then you talk to Sorensen. What's up with Campbell? Oh, Campbell's doing a hell of a job. Everybody's doing a hell of a job, except you guys suck and you can't win any games. Everybody's doing an awesome job, except you guys won 6 games. Yeah, 6-11, last place, 1 win in the division, but everybody's kicking ass and taking names. And it's like that kind of cover all annoys the hell out of me. And I'm gonna rain down hate on all of that consistently. No, but you're not getting away with that. Do you want to say that somebody who's not good is good? Then you're not good. Okay, then you're part of the problem. So, and towards the end of the year, guys like Forster were getting ripped. This guy's one of the most respected offensive line coaches in pro football. But by the end of the year, if you keep singing the praises of guys who can't play dead, guess what? They're going to say you suck and you can't coach and you're the problem and you need to go. So, I don't know. Weigh in on that, but there's a lot there. But go ahead. I didn't really ask you a question. I just kind of, just
how many times did we see? How many times did we see Jake Brendel on his ass or looking back at Purdy like, what happened? And it's like, you're the problem, man. Like you're on the ground with the defensive tackle running through you, getting to the quarterback every single play. Brendel was a large reason as to why. How many penalties did we see where it was like false start on everybody but the center because he didn't snap the football on the right snap count? That's your only job as a center is snap the football on time. And so, yeah, I mean, if I could in a perfect world, yes, give you Drew Dahlman, yes, get rid of Jake Brendel. However, the only hope I think in that is he's under contract for, I think, the next 2 years. They can't save much cap if they do let him go. Yet, again, Shanahan likes his guys. He likes Chris Forrester. He likes Jake Brendel. He's going to keep him here. He's going to be in that, they're all vying for a starting center job next year. And it's like, seriously? Maybe you don't trust Jake Nugent, fine. But to sign Matt Hennessy for a 2-year contract, that's interesting. He was a starter. He was the Alex Mack's successor in Atlanta, then got booted out there. There was a Philadelphia. Like, they're starting to find these small pieces where you're like, okay, Brendel's going to be on the outs pretty soon. However, Kyle is a fickle man. If he likes someone and you don't like him, he's going to prove to you why you should like him and be on his side. And it's like jamming a square peg into a round hole sometimes. You're just like, Jesus, Kyle. Like, let it go. Like, Tevin Coleman was old. Let him walk. Like, Jake Brendel's old. He's not good. Let him walk. And I love Kyle Shanahan. He's a great offensive coordinator. However, to run your line, your left guard wasn't good. Your center wasn't good. Your right tackle's mid. So it's like, man, like, you can't ignore this. If everyone else can see it, my mother, who doesn't even like football, is like, wow, 64 is really bad. And I'm like, yeah, he's terrible. And she's like, they got to get off of him. And I'm like, I'm hoping. We're begging and praying. We're going to confessions saying, I'm sorry, Pastor. I cursed too much on the TV today because Jake Brendel's terrible. And so you're hoping that can change in 2025.
Seriously. A couple in the chat here. I've become deaf destroyer of words. Larry, do you sit or stand when you stream? It's a very personal question. It's very personal. No, I'm just joking. I sit. I'm 6'2". If I stand, I get too tired. I'd rather just sit. We got this one down here from Terradome. What's up, Terradome? Good to see you. He says, we should have been getting linemen instead of drafting kickers who can't kick. Running backs who can't run and tight ends that can't catch. COVID in Wuhan. Gosh. I love it. Terradome in the house. We got Ron Holder in the house. He said, the Niners have to come out of this draft with Walter Nolan by any means. That sounds a lot like Sonny Weaver. Vontae Mack, no matter what. Or it sounds a little bit like Trent
yeah.
Baalke. AJ, Krug, I wrote AJ Jenkins' name down in an envelope, and I showed it to my wife. I showed it to everybody on my cul-de-sac, and I told the guys, I'm taking the guy in that envelope. So I opened that envelope, and I drafted AJ Jenkins. All right? And I'm thinking to myself, hey, Trent,
Man.
It's only a good story if the guy can play. If the guy can't play, you're just a jackass.
Right.
I could write any name down.
He's traded 2 years later for Jonathan Baldwin. Like, what are we doing?
Exactly. How to devalue a first-round pick by Trent Baalke. Once again, this live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. All right. A couple more on here before we jump to a quick mock that we get out of here with. We got Casey Cook. Do you think the Niners will draft a running back? Yes. If so, what do you think of Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee? Well, my buddy Doug Hendrickson reps him for the Wasserman Group, I believe. He's super productive. Like, if you go look at Dylan Sampson's career, he just lit it up. I mean, he had great production. That being said, I like him. I don't love him. I think there's other backs in this draft that I like more. We'll talk about it when we do the mock here. But I like him, but don't love him. But he is incredibly productive. And the Niners, I think, are interested. They also met with R.J. Harvey, another running back who's amazingly productive. Production's good. In fact, I'm kind of a believer that never draft any player that wasn't a productive college player. I can't really think of almost anybody who wasn't good in college but was great in the pros. It's a prerequisite to being good in the pros. You have to be good in college. If you're just one of these guys that goes to Indy and look good working out and have a fast 40, those are the busts. Teams that adjust their board a ton between now and the draft are the teams that don't do it well. The hay's in the barn already. If you want to change your grade based on the All-Star game performance, I'm cool with that. But you can't change it based on the combine, and you can't change it based on an on-campus workout. And yet teams will, and teams do, and they make lots of mistakes. Half Dead says, Larry passed out on a beach in Pacifica with an empty bottle of beer, crab legs all over his shirt, and Copenhagen dripping out of his mouth. That's a nice picture. Do you have footage of this? Or is this just a claim? And then Kid Tricksta says to Sterling, wow, Dieter looks different. Dieter and I usually stream on Thursdays. Dieter has had a baby. I shouldn't say that. Dieter's wife has had a baby, and so Dieter is at home, and he'll join us in a few weeks, but not
Yes,
before.
I am Dieter post baby.
Yeah. Damn, Dieter, you're looking remarkably fresh. Okay. Let's are you ready? Are you ready for a mock draft? Now I'm not gonna hold you, we're just gonna play around with it. I'm gonna share the screen. And one thing I love about Sterling knows his stuff. Now Sterling also has, he'll know more about the draft come April than he knows right now. We'll all know more about the draft come April than we know right now. But Sterling is definitely, gets into the minutia as much as almost anybody, and can he absolutely can mock draft with the best of them. So that's why he's here. And we're gonna go with the mock draft, or the NFL mock draft database simulator. I don't know why. The PFF doesn't have enough players for me. The Pro Football Network one, I kind of know where all the players are, and so it kind of, it's not. I got to go with something that's a little bit more of a surprise. So let's go here. I've marked down the Niners, so here's our picks. We have 11, 43, 75, 99, 112, 138, 139, 189, 228, 232, 255. So that's, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 picks. So this mock offers tons of trades, and if you want to make a trade, make a trade. I'm going to do you want to go first, or you want to go second? It's up to you.
I'll go first. You're probably
Okay.
gonna know a heck of a lot more than I do when it comes to like those 7th and 6th round guys right now. But I can definitely
No
give
sweat.
you few tidbits on these top guys in the draft this year.
Okay. Here we go. We're gonna hit start, and away we go. Okay, so let's move that off the board for a second. Let's just see how this thing went in front of us. Well, this is who's left. Will Johnson, Tataroa McMillan is still there. Ashton Gianti. What's the best pronunciation? Genty. From Boise. He was going for 12 yards a pop until Penn State, and then he suddenly got slowed down. Tyler Warren, a lot of people think Gronk. Jalon Walker, the Butkus Award winner. Is he a linebacker? Is he an edge rusher? Malachi Starks, great free safety. Simmons, big-time offensive lineman. Stewart, I'm an A&M fan, but this guy's got great talent. Tyler Booker's a big road grader. Membu, Mike Green, Cole. There's a lot of good players. This is the first round. Okay, so go ahead, Dieter, or go ahead, Sterling. I'm on this page, so I'm not even looking at you. Go ahead, Sterling. You will start us off. Who would you like to, and by the way, you also have offers. So let's take a look at the offers just for the hell of it. You have 3 offers. You can trade your first for no picks this year and go with Phillies.
the entire Eagles next year's draft class.
You can have next year Eagle draft. Okay.
Pulling a Ricky Williams, I guess. Man.
Yeah, that's interesting. You can move back with Jacksonville. They'll give you their first next year and their 4th next year. And if you give them your first and you get 2/3 in return, that in real life, that would be intriguing because that first round pick could be the first pick in the whole freaking draft, especially if they trade Trevor Lawrence, like there's talk. And then the Colts are offering next year's 1, next year's 3, and next year's 5. I'd say reject the trades, but what do you think?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't take any of those trades.
Okay. They're kind of bizarro trades. So is there, and I can go any up here. I can choose any position if you want to look, at the position group, which we'll need to do as we go further. But is there anybody that jumps off the page at you right now looking at the way this thing has gone in front?
Yeah, I think it's really hard
trying to show you all the guys here.
Yeah, it's really hard to ignore names like Walter Nolan. It's hard to really ignore a name like Mike Green. I think it's really important San Francisco addresses defense. I know that this is one of the deepest defensive tackle drafts in recent years. I'm not hyper focused on you got to get the guy at 11. Had there been Will Campbell or Kevin Banks, maybe you could talk me into one of those guys at 11. I don't want a receiver here. I don't need a running back here. I don't buy into the idea of Tyler Warren at 11. I don't love that at all. I don't think he's Brock Bowers. I don't think he's Gronk. He could be great, but my mind is set on the trenches, and I'm kind of between a player like Mike Green and maybe even Armin Membo, who I know Dan Brugler loves of The Athletic, thinks that's a guy for San Francisco at 11. But I think it's Salah's world, and we're all living in it. I think that Mike Green is, to me, the guy I would take here.
Interesting. So Mike Green is an edge rusher from Marshall, and some of the footage of Mike Green from the Senior Bowl was freaking amazing.
Yeah, he's incredible.
He was absolutely amazing. Let me see if I can type him in so maybe we could show somebody a highlight of Mike Green, because he was unbelievable. He just abused Connerly, and just crushed him. Just absolutely crushed him. He's had 17.5 sacks this year. Let's see. Yeah, here it is.
I have him at 6'4", 248 pounds. If you want to go PFF's route, he had a 91.6 pass rush grade, a 90.2 run defense grade. He had 67 total pressures last year. Like you said, 17 sacks, had a 21% pass rush win rate. Hyper athletic. He's a fluid pass rusher. He has really smooth hips. He's fearless against the run. I mean, when you talk about a guy that wreaks havoc on defenders, it's Mike Green. He's probably this draft's number 3 edge rusher. And after that, it's a pretty steep drop-off from guys. There's second-round picks you like and late-round draft picks you like, but you want to get one of the top guys, Mike Green is screaming at me on the draft board.
Here's a up-close highlight of Green just abusing guys at Mobile. Now, think of that. He just threw that guy down like he was tissue paper. This is a 250-pound guy. I loved his interview too afterwards. He's like, man, I mean, this guy's serious. This guy's a serious football player. Now, he is smaller, and you're seeing him rush there from a 2-point stance. Do you have any concerns about whether he can set the edge and be a 200 set? You know, he's not going to put on 20 pounds. So you're going to have to go with a 250-pound guy, and the Niners tend to like bigger ends in this wide 9. Is that a concern or no?
I don't think so. When you look at what Saleh did with the Jets, you know, they were drafting guys like Will McDonald. They were getting their Son Reddicks. You know, they were just filling up every type of defensive edge rusher they can get out there in the Big Apple. My only question about Mike Green is really he played at Marshall. Like, you're not playing the SEC. You're not playing Alabama or Ohio State, Michigan. You're not playing the big boys out there in college football. My only question is competition with him, but Senior Bowl gives you that ability to see what they can do against top tackles out there. So I pick Mike Green instantly.
Okay, so now we're in the second round. Now it's my turn. They're at pick 43. Buffalo's calling. They're offering 56 and a fifth, a sixth, and next year's third and fourth. I'm going to say no, even though that's not a bad offer, but I would say no. This one, you can move back 7 spots for a sixth. No, if I'm moving back 7 spots in the second round, I need more than a sixth. And this one's offering a 2, a 6, and a 7 next year to move down to the fourth. Nah, I don't want to do that. And then this one's offering 26, round 2, 3. I don't want to give up this draft for this year. I like this year. So let's take a look at the board now. This is interesting. So Benjamin Morrison is a really good player, but he's also been hurt all year. Notre Dame corner. And Notre Dame's defensive backfield was well coached. Then you got Manowari, who from South Carolina, just a big physical safety, 6'4", 220, very fast. Derek Harmon from Oregon, a lot of people like him. Ursi, the offensive tackle from Minnesota, is intriguing, definitely. I don't really like Jack Sawyer or JT Tuamola from Ohio State. I don't love those guys. I think they're going to be overdrafted. On this one, man, this is tough because you've already gone edge. I would normally go Landon Jackson here, who's a big edge. But, I don't know.
Heavy hands, very heavy hands.
Yeah, I don't know that I would go that there. Gosh. Then I also want to go defensive tackle. I love Darius Alexander from Toledo. He's intriguing.
He's phenomenal.
Kyle Kennard from South Carolina is the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, but he would also be another edge rusher. Let's check out the D linemen. Who's behind here? You got Deion Walker, Alexander. I really like Ty Robinson, but this is too early for Ty Robinson. I kind of feel like this might be the linebacker or the cornerback sweet spot. I'm taking Benjamin Morrison. I'm going best player available. To me, this kid should have. There's no way he should be here. This guy should be gone in the top 12 picks. He's a really good corner, and to get him at 43 is too much of a steal. So now you're on the board here at 75, and you can. This is interesting. You can move one spot down and get a 5, a 7, a 5, and a 6. I mean, see, this is where this mock is not great. Is that who's giving you 4 draft choices to move one spot? I just don't. That's not really realistic. And then let's see the other trades. You can go from Jacksonville down to 88 from 75, and get a 4th round pick and a 5th next year. And let's see, you got one more offer here. Why is it not going? Let's see. Oh, there it is. You can also move to 81 and get a 4th round pick as well and a 5th round pick next year. So would you like to plug and pick? And then also I can show you the board.
Let's see who's on the board.
Denzel Burke, Noel Williams, who was from Cal, who had a really good Shrine game. Parrish, seems like a lot of corners. Parrish from K-State's a really good corner.
I think you have
Kobe
cornerbacks
Bryant's pretty
picked
good
on the board.
Oh, that's why. I'm sitting there going, yeah. I'm sitting there. Why? It's all corners. Okay, so now you're looking at both of the Buckeye running backs. A lot of Niner fans go, no, not another 3rd round back. But I'll tell you this, man. Either one of those guys, you can't go wrong. Travion Henderson's good. Quinshon Judkins is really good. Here's some of the guys. Jared Ivey's a big edge. Mason Taylor is Jason Taylor's kid. That's the tight end. Yeah. Kennard is the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, as I mentioned. Barrett Carter, if you want a receiver, tiny little receiver, you can go Tez. Restrepo is a good route runner. Scatabo. I kind of like this kid Knight from South Carolina. He's super athletic. I like this tackle Belton. Chris Paul they met with. I saw that this week.
Yeah.
Jared Wilson's a jumbo center. Farmer from Florida State's a pretty good defensive tackle. So
who are
there's some
the
interesting-
offensive linemen available right now?
Anthony
Let's see.
Belton is the highest rated one from tackle.
Okay.
Then there's Ernest Green, Trapillo from Boston. Jalen Rivers, pretty good athlete from Miami. Holland Pierce is a monster for Rutgers, just an absolute house. J.C. Davis is a good offensive lineman. He's a day 3 guy, but he went to McClymonds, and Illinois ran the ball this year. And that's the outside line. The inside line, you have Mbow from Purdue, Ratledge from Georgia, Jared Wilson from Georgia, Fairchild. You got 3/5 of the Georgia line there. I kind of like Jake Majors. I love this Willie Lampkin kid. I'm definitely going to pick him later. Jackson Slater, who's coming on the show next week from Sac State.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to having Jackson on. Is there another position you want to look at, or is there a certain spot?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in between. Either
this is the time of the year where this is the time of the draft where you almost have to start to hunt around a little bit.
right, like I'm in between. Like we've gone defense twice. We did trenches. We did cornerback. Do you go offensive line here? I really like Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I also see a lot of defensive tackles I like, but do you want to go defense 3 times in a row? I'm not entirely sure about that, knowing the needs you have on the offensive line. My only concern about Trapillo is that he's probably a tackle. He can't play on the inside. He's not going to be your left guard. And I think he's going to be a legitimate right tackle for you.
He's a
I
right
don't
tackle.
think they're right. So I don't think they're moving off of McKivitz this year, which then gets you into the conversation about Marcus Mbow from Purdue, where he's 6'5", 300 pounds, very light offensive lineman. But he also played right guard in 2022. I think that may be a place they look at and say, could Pooney play left guard in 2025? Then Mbow goes to right guard in 2025, and you have McKivitz there, but you've improved your trenches a lot on the interior already. I think for the sake of getting it, I think Shanahan likes these weird, kind of undersized, lighter guys. He wants guys to pull and get out and be able to move. I think Marcus Mbow does that a lot for Purdue. He has speed. He's a decent first punch, really good athlete. I think when you look at what Kyle likes to do on the offensive line, I would not be shocked to hear that they are hot on Marcus Mbow's radar, because I think he screams Kyle Shanahan. Now, again, there are concerns about, the technique and little slower in his stance. You don't love that, but I think that to me, we haven't gone offensive line just yet. I would do that here.
Okay. And there's versatility here. I mean, if you're going to have a young offensive lineman, the nice thing about Mbow is he could play probably center, guard, or tackle. So, if you're going to have him on the bench as a rookie, it's always nice to have a guy who can play all 3 spots. All right, so now we're at pick number 99. We have an edge rusher, a corner, and an interior offensive lineman. I'm never too worried about what we've already picked, because I just really try to look forward and not worry about, because the bottom line is, it's an awesome running back draft. It's an awesome, defensive tackle draft. It's a really, really good, and then it's a really, really bad wide receiver draft. So it's like, you can't always go for need. Okay, let's see. 99. I love this linebacker, Demetrius Knight. I just think he's fantastic. He's related to Gladys Knight, by the way, in the Pips. But I also love Anthony Belton. Anthony Belton is just a house. But you've already got Mbow there, so I'm not sure if I would go Belton. I could go corner. I love Noel Williams. I think he had 7 or 8 interceptions this year. He led FBS in picks. He had another one in the Shrine game. I mean, he's really good. But you know what? The guy I'm going for is right here, Ty Robinson from Nebraska. This guy reminds me of Keith Millard. He is just a badass. He's 6'6", 310, and he just plays with his hair on fire. This duo, him and Nash Hutmacher, are just monster. And I'm okay with not going tackle up front because I love some of the tackles, but this is the guy that I think has the great motor. So I'm taking Ty Robinson out of Nebraska at 99. So now you're up at 112, and you have 4 trade offers. You could move back for a 4th and 6th next year. You can move for a 5 and 2 6, 2 6s. You can move for a 5 and next year's 7th, or you can go 5 and a 6 and next year's 6th. I kind of think the 4th round is going to be one of the best rounds of this draft. What are you thinking here? I can highlight any position you like, but this is the top of the board.
Yeah, I think, not that I'd want to do it, but I think you look at who is at the top there on the draft board. I think it was Jordan Birch from Oregon. Again, I'm not saying I would do that now, but Jordan Birch, 6'5", almost 300 pounds, senior, he had 34
end.
pressures this past year. Yeah, and so I think 10 sacks. You want to talk about, he played defensive tackle in high school. Maybe he gives you the inside-outside versatility you want. Charles Omenihu screaming at you. I know they have Yetur Gross-Matos. I think Saul would have a lot of fun. I think he's just one of those nasty mother you-know-whaters that get inside the defensive line and tear things up. Again, defensive-heavy draft thus far, but I'm having a hard time turning that down. I do want to see who they have at safety and linebacker, though.
Okay, at safety, you have Malachi Moore. A lot of people like Malachi Moore. He's a really good player. Otherwise, down the board, I mean, I like this Mac McWilliams from Central Florida. I thought he looked pretty good in the All-Star game. I don't love the draft for safety. R.J. Mickens is a good player. His dad was played at A&M in the 80s. If you remember Mickens, I think it's Ray Mickens, and this is Ray Jr. That's what they call him, R.J. Mickens. He's a pretty good corner, or a pretty good safety. Malik Verdon, he's not a bad player. Oladipo, his brother is already in the league, I believe. There's some interesting names here. That's Bryce Anderson is not a bad player. So that's safety. What's the other spot you want to look at?
Cornerback.
Corner. You got Denzel Burke, good corner, good tackler. You've got Noah Williams from Cal, Jacob Parrish from K-State, very strong one-on-one tackler. Kobe Bryant is really lean, but he's a dog. Both these guys from Kansas are good. Mello Dotson, who's tall. Mello Dotson's like 6'4". Kobe Bryant is like 175 pounds, but he's 6'1", and he's really, really aggressive.
Is Knight there at linebacker still? I'm not sure if he's gone just yet.
He might still be here. Yeah, he's there. He's number 2 linebacker.
Go ahead and talk him up for me.
Well, I mean, okay, so Demetrius Knight, I mean, the footage that I saw of this guy, first of all, he's on a great South Carolina defense, and he just closes like nobody's business. I mean, this guy can really, really run. I don't know what his 40 is going to be, but I'm eager to see what he runs at the combine, because on the film, it's off the charts. In fact, I'm probably going to see if I can show you something on this guy, because he's so good. And there's some undersized linebackers. This guy's actually has good size. But he really can run. I mean, really can run. And he's, as I said, he's an academic All-American. He was a transfer. Let me see here. Maybe I can search over here. And he's just a really, really, I think I spelled Demetrius wrong. I'm getting my Demetrius. Let's see. Let me double check the spelling on that. But yeah, this guy, he's smart. He was good in 2 different programs. And if you watched him, he just flies all over the place. I mean, he's just a really, really fast player. And when you see him close the space, it's incredible. It's incredible watching this guy close the space. Let me see if I can type this in better. And South Carolina, I mean, there was a couple plays where, he's running it down. You got the edge rusher running it down. And yet this guy looked like he was just moving twice as fast as everybody else. He's just super explosive. Okay, here, I got the footage here. Yeah, he's 250 pounds. Here's an interview that he did. We'll show you the interview. Let me see here. Hold on a second. We'll go back to our big board. We'll stop sharing that, and then we will share this. Here we go. Here he is doing an interview with a guy at the combine.
What has this experience so far been like for you, man, this week?
Yeah, man, it's been awesome. Nothing short of awesome. It's been a blessing to be out here with these guys and to be able to compete with the guys from Columbia also, but being able to play with guys from all around the SEC, and then guys from Oregon and places like that. We wanted to speak it into existence. So we started habits in the spring, took those habits into the summer, and then into fall camp.
Okay, you can't necessarily hear him too well, but let me show you one more highlight of him so you guys can kind of see the highlights. And there's a bunch of good ones, but let me make sure I can find the one that I'm looking for. But yeah, this guy really closes, and great speed. Here's a workout. He's D'Angelo Hall's cousin. Remember D'Angelo Hall, who the Niners, I guess, were talking about maybe having as a did they interview him, or did they rumored to be interviewing him? Or?
I think they interviewed him as like one of their assistant defensive backs coaches.
Okay, so here is the workout. Just, linebacker Jets coach putting him through the paces here. But there's a lot to like. I mean, the speed is really good. And he just, I don't know, you can't really tell here, but I mean, he's a hitter. He's smart. I think he's scheme versatile. I think he's a guy that could step in right away, day one, and start next to Fred Warner, especially if you got rid of a guy like Greenlaw. I love this program. I think South Carolina is a tremendous program, and he's an incredible talent. Let me see one more of him. I think we have one more we can show you. Let's see. Here it is up top. Here it is. Yeah, now that's the play I'm talking about. Now look at the quarterback. The Milrow moves to his left. That's the All-Pro, or that's the edge rusher who's leads the conference in Defensive Player of the Year. And look at Knight just close this down. And look where he comes from. He comes from here and he just sprints. He just closes that space down instantly. The speed is really off the charts. And I don't know.
In this mock draft, are we under the assumption that Dre Greenlaw is not coming back next year?
No.
Okay.
I would say it's an unknown. It's an unknown. Stephen Draper says Barrett Carter is much faster, 4.13. Yeah, but Barrett Carter is not, doesn't have the thump that this guy has. I love Barrett Carter too, but Barrett Carter is more like a converted safety. He's kind of a runaround guy. But let's we'll share the screen on our big board again so we can get back to our mock. There it is. Okay. So, and you can go either one, really. I mean, really, you're looking at a lot of good linebackers here. Barrett Carter, Demetrius Knight, Chris Paul Jr. from Ole Miss is also a good player. Bassa from Oregon's a really good player. My favorite linebackers I love Shamar James from Florida. Carson Bruner is a good special teamer. But then even further down the board, David Benda from Texas and Chandler Martin from Memphis. I mean, they're awesome. They're a little undersized, but they're just awesome players. Leaders, tacklers, guys who can run probably 4.5 or faster. But it's your pick, and I don't want to influence you. So what direction do you want to go? We can also look at other positions.
Just for Kyle Shanahan's sake, who's at running back right now?
Yep. Scatabo.
Cam.
Yeah, Scatabo. RJ Harvey. Devin Neal, very, very fast.
Yeah.
Etienne, very quick player for Georgia. If you go further down the list, this is the guy that I love, this Kyle
Manung guy. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's just crazy. I mean, I seen this guy get hit so hard, and then he doesn't go down. I mean, he just keeps running. One time I saw him get hit so hard that he got knocked 3 or 4 yards laterally, and he just kept running. It was the most amazing thing I've seen. That's one of the greatest contact balance backs there is. Kyle Manung guy. And then there's a bunch of other guys. Bayshell Tutin's a good return man. Yarns is a good player. This guy was the MVP.
Do I go with Knight, or do I go with Birch. Like
Scatterbo?
that's my conundrum here. Is like, do I value what Salah can do with the defensive line and rebuild those
Birch
trenches?
is no longer
Do I-
there. Birch is gone. Oh no, there he is. He's in. They list. See, Birch is an edge, but they list him as a
yeah.
defensive lineman. He's an edge though, but they don't have him under edge. So Birch is a big edge.
He's not very long, but I think I just love that fit with Birch in San Francisco.
Okay, we'll go Birch. It's gonna be a good grade too because he was, B plus because he's quite a bit up on the board there. They had him in the 80s, and this is at 112. All right, we pick back to back 138, 139. Let's go all. David Walker's an amazing pass rusher. Love him. You know what? I'm not even going to think about this one. This guy dominated the Senior Bowl. Savion Jones from LSU. This guy is an amazing player. He played edge rusher at 285, 6'6", 285 for LSU. They moved him inside during the All-Star game, and this guy wrecked shop in the Senior Bowl. He just totally dominated. He's 6'6", and he's 6'6", 280, and he's just ripped. And I don't know if he's going to play defensive end or defensive tackle, or if he's going to be like your NASCAR package defensive tackle, but he's just too good to pass up right there. So I'm going to say Savion Jones. But what do you want to go with? You're up now.
Let's look at tight ends.
Yeah, it's a great tight end draft. So you got the Oregon kid. You got Gadsden. Let's see if we can move this up a little higher. There we go. Mitchell Evans he tore an ACL 2 years ago, but he came back this year. He was amazing. Conyers from Texas Tech started at ASU and transferred. Jackson Hawes made a couple one-handed catches during one of the All-Star games. He started at Yale. Super smart kid, and he's pretty athletic. Urasek was Stanford's best player, and he transferred to Georgia and then just became pretty good. I mean, he wasn't amazing, but he's pretty good. Prieskorn's a jumbo tight end from Ole Miss, and Fairweather has like ridiculous 87-inch wingspan or something. He's got the longest arms of any tight end in this draft. Dupre from Alabama, I know they met with. So this is the whole tight end board. There's a lot of good tight ends.
I think, last year San Francisco, I think, made a mistake not drafting Ben Sinnott, who eventually went to the Arizona Cardinals.
Yep.
I think Benjamin Urasek is a lot of what Ben Sinnott was last year for Kansas State. He's 6'4", 243 pounds. He didn't have a lot of production as a receiver this year, but he wasn't utilized that way. But he can block. He can play fullback. He can play in the slot. He can play inline tight end. Again, it's more of a traits-based reason why I like him, because the production wasn't really there. That said, I think Kyle Shanahan sees that as maybe a Kyle Juszczyk replacement eventually down the road. I think that makes a lot of sense. However, I really, really, really like, if I can find it here in my notes I have, is it Mitchell Evans? I think
Mitchell Evans is the Notre Dame tight end.
Yeah,
Mitchell
like him
Evans,
a lot, 6'5", 260.
Yeah, it's a good receiver.
Yeah. The thing is, though, like, he tore his ACL and MCL in 2023. He's kind of working his way back. I don't know if he'd be an instant player. Then you get into Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, who was really good, 43 catches, 591 yards, 3 touchdowns. He can box out. He can climb the ladder. Great after the catch. My big knock on him is he alligator arms some passes, and he also not a great run blocker. Man, that's tough. Of the tight ends, who do you like the most out of Ferguson, Evans, and Urasek?
Probably Evans. Just because Evans has really great hand-eye coordination. There were a couple catches that he made in the playoff run where there was a sea of hands, and somehow he still, in a sea of hands, maintained his hand-eye coordination and brought it in. So I think I love him. Conyers is a great athlete. Urasek is I think a great receiver. I think Urasek might be a little underpowered as a blocker because they used Oscar Delp an awful lot as a blocker. So I'd be a little concerned there just because, do you want a receiving tight? In Mason Pline, you have I think a pretty decent receiver, but I think you got to have somebody who can block. So I love them all though. I love Urasek. I love Hawes. I love Conyers. I love Evans. I probably like Evans the most, but he also has to have the knee checked out at the combine. You got to find out exactly how, is it bone on bone? Is there cartilage in there? How does it look? I mean, you got to lean on your doctors a little bit to figure out, but he looked damn good this year. Notre Dame went to him as much as they went to their receivers in the past game.
Right. Man, it's either Evans for me. Maybe we go linebacker here or receiver. Let's check the receivers for a second. We got to replace Deebo. Let's see what happens.
There's Kyron Lacey, Pat Bryant, Nick Nash, if you want to go local from San Jose State. This guy's pretty athletic. Keandre Lambert-Smith from Auburn, kind of raw, kind of a little stiff. Zachary Franklin was a transfer from Texas San Antonio to Illinois. He was a pretty good player. This kid Chisholm is a tiny little guy. I don't know what he's going to run, but he definitely made some plays. He was a late add to the Senior Bowl. There's not, I mean, it's kind of these guys are pretty raw, let's just say that. Yeah. I mean, I like a few of them, but they're all pretty raw. It's not a spectacular vintage wide receiver draft. Just looking, the one guy that I kind of think's a sleeper on the wide receiver, and there's a couple guys. One, this guy right here, Mario Williams from Tulane, who started at USC, and all he ever does is score tons of touchdowns. He just makes touchdown after touchdown. He's really fast. That guy's really intriguing. And then way, way, way down here,
we're getting deep into it.
If you watched Ole Miss had great talent this year. I mean, they had Trey Harris and all kinds of guys, but this kid Jordan Watkins had a year. I mean, he really did. Let me see. Let me just check his Jordan Watkins. Jordan Watkins for Ole Miss had an amazing year. Every time I looked up, this guy was playing incredible football and producing left and right. And I just want to check out his game log. I'll give you an idea of what he did this year. He's not the biggest receiver, 5'11", 200 pounds. He caught 49 balls, 906 yards, 9 touchdowns. But against Duke in the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, I watched that game. 7 catches for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. Okay,
man. Against
Arkansas in Fayetteville in first week in November, 8 catches, 254 yards and 5 touchdowns. Okay, I'm the guy. I saw that game. Maybe I'm a little biased because I saw those 2 games, but 8 for 254 and 5 touchdowns, 7 for 180 and 2 touchdowns on an Ole Miss team that has all kinds of weapons. This guy's he's a little short. He's kind of short and stocky, but he can run. He's really intriguing. Now he's probably a day 3 guy, but that's a guy that he is definitely a player. Jordan Watkins.
The receivers don't interest me. It feels like none of the guys there. They'll probably go with the veteran in free agency. Maybe linebacker here. I know you had a lot of guys you liked earlier. Maybe there's somebody out there still.
Linebacker is going to be. There's going to be some good players here for sure. I mean, the Oregon kid is a leader. There's no question about that. Jack Kaiser is a Notre Dame guy, but I think he's just a college player. I don't think he's great. Cody Simon, underrated player for the Buckeyes. Shamar James, very athletic linebacker for Florida. Jackson Woodard was the Mountain West Conference Defensive Player of the Year at UNLV. David Benda is one of my favorite players. He's 5'11", 235 pounds, but he's just amazing. In fact, I gotta see if I can show you David Benda, because David Benda, I mean, this guy is just a crazy, crazy athlete. And it's funny, I watched Texas. He had an interception in the national championship game. And he's just a freakish runner, athlete, closes space. David Benda. Let me see if I can show you one of the highlights of this guy. This is a guy who's talking about his closing speed and his violence. Okay, here we go. Let me do this. Let me get back to our board. We'll stop sharing for just a second. and we'll go to this, and we'll let you guys see David Benda. He's 5'11", but he's 235 pounds, and he's number 33. He runs like the wind. Here he is, right here, circled, and he's just so super fast. I don't know if you can tell, but he's going to close this guy down. He just dragged that guy down. David Benda, inside linebacker, another guy, smart guy, academic All-American. He can sideline to sideline runner, and like watch him close this space. Maybe that wasn't the play I was thinking of, but here he is right here in the box. This is against Bama, and he just shoots the gap, and he gets up, and he still gets the quarterback.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and you can tell. I don't know if you can tell. You can see what an athlete this guy is. I mean, this guy's a freak, a total freak. And it's like, you know what? I kind of think one of the most overrated things in all of football evaluation is height, because the athletes that play this game now are so athletic. The players that play the game, it's such an athletic game that it doesn't matter anymore if you're like in the old days. Oh, you want this guy to be 6'2", okay? But guess what? I'd rather have a guy who's 5'11", but he's a freaky athlete, than a guy who's 6'2", but he's just an okay athlete.
Right.
And that's what this guy is. He's just a freak. So there you go. That's David Benda. But that, he's just one of many. I mean, Chandler Martin is really, really good. If you go further down this list, Eugene Asante had a tremendous Senior Bowl. He's a super hyperactive tackle machine. This guy Dolak for Buffalo probably set the NC2A record for tackles. He had tons of tackles. Deebo Williams from South Carolina is just an absolute crushing hitter. This is a guy who just looks to kill, seek and destroy. Jalen Sneed from Notre Dame's a pretty good player. So there's a bunch of good linebackers for sure. And they're all pretty much still here as we're at pick 139.
If a lot of them are there, then I think that we can find one later in the draft if we inevitably do that. I think San Francisco needs that backup tight end. I'm okay risking it with Mitchell Evans. I think if the knee's okay, then great. Because if he is and he's okay, then you have a really good run blocker. Last year per PFF, the 60.7 run blocking grade. The guy that can play over the middle. He has size. He can be a red zone guy. He's not the best athlete and isn't the best separator, but he's super dense, and he plays like it. So I think if it was me, I would go Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame at tight end.
All right, we went Mitchell Evans. Now we're at 189. Let's go to all, see what's the best available. Now I don't know. Malachi Moore might be hard to pass here because he's a safety. The Niners also need a kicker. Are they going to go with Borregales? They met with Borregales. I can't draft a kicker again. I just can't. I don't care. I'd rather sign a kicker on the way to the stadium in week 1 than draft a kicker.
Do you want to put the draft board on the screen so they can see it?
Sorry about that. I'm looking at the board. I'm not looking at the screen. There we go.
Larry's focused in. He's zoned in.
Here we go. Here's the draft board so you guys can see it. So Malachi Moore is the highest rated guy. It's tough. I'm going to go scroll down the board here and see if anybody really jumps out. There always will be somebody. Cody Simon I like a lot. Jalen Conyers would be another tight end. I really like him. Taj Brooks is a bowling ball running back, but he's really good. This Bama D lineman's pretty good too. Tim Smith. He just keeps getting bigger. Wow. Mac McWilliams I like as the tight end. I think I'm going my Sac State. Wait a second, actually. Let me see, because there's one inside player that I really love that I got to have in this draft. And there's really a couple of them. But I love Marcus Ware from Montana State, the center guard. But I also love the North Carolina kid if he's here. I don't think he is. I guess he's already been drafted. The 5'10", 270-pound North Carolina center. I don't know if you saw him. But, okay, let's see. I'll go linebacker here. I talked up Benda so much, I might as well go Benda. And there he is. Okay, so I'll go David Benda. So now you got
There
the
you go.
inside backer. So now you're at 228. We got 3 more picks left. You have 2 of them, 228 and 255. And
All right.
let's see. You can at this point, best available. The deepest things in the draft are D tackle, running back. I would say are the deepest positions in the draft. So there's going to be some amazing running backs. There's going to be some amazing defensive tackles.
I am all for drafting. I think is it Khalil Mullings from Michigan, 6'2", 230 pounds.
Yeah.
948 yards this past year. 657 were after contact, which is just insane. 37 forced missed tackles, 12 rushing touchdowns, 16 explosive plays. Linebacker convert to running back. I think when you talk about getting in, 6'7", the round 6'7", like this is a guy who doesn't fumble. He's only running back for the last 2 years. Only play running back the last 2 years. He's growing into the position still after converting from linebacker. Kyle Shanahan likes those fullbacks, running backs that see the game like quarterbacks do. And I think Mullings really does that out of the backfield. And I think that is Jordan Mason going to come back? It depends on the tender they give him. Elijah Mitchell's probably gone. You like Grendo, but he can't stay healthy. McCaffrey had the PCL and the calf and Achilles stuff. I think Mullings would be a tough SOB to get in. I don't know, what is this, round 6 or 7 right now? Yeah. I think you really have to make this pick.
There we go. A+, by the way. I gave you an A+ on that one.
There you go.
That's a good one. Let's see. Running back is super loaded, but you just drafted one.
Yeah.
Montrell Johnson from Florida is amazing. Mario Anderson's really good. Okay. Interior, I might go. I'm going to check that D-line again. Let's move this down a little bit so we can see more of these. This Jamare Caldwell. God, he's 340 pounds and he's really fast.
He's good.
He's good. He had a good week. I'm going to go defensive line again. And there's a bunch of good ones here. But I'm going to go with this guy right here, Eric Gregory from Arkansas. He's just a horse, and he moves exceptionally well. Arkansas is a really underrated program. In a normal draft, this guy's in the 4th or 5th round. In this draft, he's going to be there at the end. And he if you watch his film, you're going to love him. I mean, he's good against the run, good against the pass. And you're up with pick number 255, the last pick in the mock here. Let's take a look. Alrighty. Who's the best player available?
What do we got? We got a tight end. What do you know about Craig Woodson, safety?
Nothing really. I don't know much about. Well, I saw him in the All-Star game, and he dropped an interception.
Okay.
He looked like a decent mover, but he didn't look like a special pro athlete. He looked like a college athlete.
Okay.
He didn't stand out.
Is this where we go with the Jake Moody replacement, the very last pick of the draft?
Let's see. There's Ryan Fitzgerald. Oh, the Michigan kicker, I'll say this, the Michigan kicker is a damn good kicker. This Dominic Zavada.
We've heard that before.
I know.
We saw her lettuce.
It's funny, but I mean, I don't know if I would want to replace a Michigan kicker with another Michigan kicker. Also, I'll say this guy's good. Caden Davis. Now, he missed a kick in the Senior Bowl, but the guy's got a big leg. I mean, really big leg. He's got a tremendous boot. I know he's listed at 840 here, but I mean, to me, I think he's a pretty damn good kicker.
This is like one of those spots where, you go back and think about Brock Purdy. Do you want to risk one of these guys being a UDFA and having the open market to pick and choose from? Oh, man.
Well, you can also go back quarterback. Tyler Shugg, if you like Tyler Shugg.
Like, they're probably not going to bring back Brandon Allen. I'm going to assume Joshua Dobbs is gone. I know Tanner Mordecai is your guy, but can he be quarterback number 2 this year? Who knows? Hopefully, maybe. I will say this, that Tyler Shaw?
Shugg. He goes by Shugg. He started at Oregon like 7 years ago. He's 6'5", 225. He played at Texas Tech. He played at Louisville. He finished up at Louisville this year. This guy throws the ball great. Like, I'll say this. If the Niners took Tyler Shugg, people would demand Tyler Shugg to play over Brock Purdy at some point because he is a bigger, stronger guy who throws a great football. I mean, he's 6'5", 225 with a real gun. So, he doesn't move well, but
he's a true pocket passer.
He's a pocket passer, but he's a pocket passer with a howitzer. He's got a really good gun.
Right.
Yeah,
the one drawback to him is that he's played 7 years of college football. Right. He'll be 26 this year in the middle of his rookie season. Broke his collarbone in 2021, shoulder injury in 2022, broken fibula in 2023. That said, I mean, 3,350 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, 22 big-time throws this year. Like, you talk about a quarterback that fans say, wow, there's the archetype for a Carson Palmer-like player that can stand in the pocket, take a few hits, but can toss that sucker downfield. I just, like, would Kyle Shanahan actually like a quarterback like that? I have a hard time buying into it. I feel like now he doesn't mind those smaller quarterbacks that can be kind of a little squirrely like Purdy and Mordecai are. I don't know if he'd want that true pocket passer.
Yeah, I mean, and Kyle's on record as saying that he wants his backup quarterback to look similar to his starter.
Right.
So, maybe he doesn't want, as you said, the pocket player. And then, I like Peyton Thorne a little bit. He runs around. He's got a good athleticism, but I don't love any of these quarterbacks, to be completely honest. I mean, maybe there's a guy. To me, I don't see Brady Cook's not bad. This kid Hennigan is kind of clutch from Memphis, but it's not a vintage quarterback draft. So I don't think I'd go quarterback. But let me see what's the best. Conyers is if you want a second tight end. Hawes is a good tight end. Slater from Sac State is a pretty good guard. Stackhouse is another good defensive tackle. I think he's going to for sure play in the NFL. This guy Baron Sorrell is really a decent pass rusher too. He had a good week in Mobile.
You said Slater's going to be on your show this week or next week?
He's going to be on this week, Wednesday, I believe, Wednesday of this week. And he's an interesting guy. He went to Sac State, and I watched him in the All-Star game. He's a smart player, and he's the kind of player that he'll block his guy, and then when his guy's blocked, he'll go try to help out on somebody else. I mean, he's like always looking to do more, which is a great trait for an offensive lineman.
I'm all for that. He's a hometown kid. If he can play the inside, San Francisco needs the depth. If Mumba's playing tackle or center, you got to have somebody else out there. I don't think they're going to have enough depth on the interior. Burford plays left tackle, also has played right guard, plays left guard, has also played right guard. Feliciano's probably going to retire after the end of the year. I guess it's already over now, but seems like he's done. He's so done. Let's go with your guy Slater.
Yeah. Jackson Slater, come on down. He's going to love that. We're going to tell him next week, hey, we drafted you in the mock draft. So here we go. Here's the mock draft. We start with the edge rusher, Mike Green. We go with the corner and Benjamin Morrison, probably two plug-and-play starters there. Marcus Mbow from Purdue, very versatile offensive lineman. Ty Robinson is just a war daddy inside, 6'6", 310. Birch gives them just a gigantic edge rusher. He's huge. In fact, this draft, you got two big edge rushers because Savion Jones, I think, can play the edge or he can play inside. You got a really good second tight end in Mitchell Evans. You got a fast linebacker in Benda. You get a horse of a fullback / running back. I mean, this guy could be either if you wanted to. He's 230 pounds. He's strong, very strong player. Mullings does not go backwards. He goes forward. Gregory, I think, is a sleeper defensive tackle. And then Jackson Slater in the 7th round with pick 255. Sac State get a B+ on that one. So I like it. Nice mock. Appreciate you stopping by. Tell people, Sterling, if they're not familiar with where they can find you, tell them where they can find you and where you're putting stuff out and how often you put stuff out, and let people know where you're at.
Yeah, so on social media, you can follow me at 49ers_access. That's the X, or if you still call it Twitter, that's the Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. You can follow my work at heavy.com. I cover the 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. I know. It's the Packers. They stink. We all get it. That said, I put out content on YouTube and on the podcasting platform, Spotify, Google, wherever else you get your podcast from, weekly, sometimes daily, on YouTube as well. At 49ers Access. And yeah, that's all I got.
Man, let's hit a couple of supers before we get out of here. So the people that have left them when we were doing this, Sean Shepard says, I think Deebo was wearing green as a prophetic statement that he was eating salads until training camp. Oh, there you go.
Wow.
that was a stretch. Jaheem Rakim says, can you trade Deebo in number 11 to the Jaguars to move to number 5? I think PFF might have had that as a suggestion this week. Did they not?
It was Connor Rogers had that, yeah.
To get Mason Graham.
Yeah.
What do you think of Mason Graham? I mean, he's just a barrel-chested, seems like he can do nothing wrong. I mean, I watched him. He's like an instructional video on how to play D-tackle.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. Like, if you make that move, you're in the Will Campbell conversation, the Mason Graham conversation. You're in, one of those blue chip prospects. That's really hard to say no to. Again, Salah's back, so Mason Graham makes a lot of sense. He's twitchy. He's got speed. He doesn't always win with power, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. He's an instant starter. He'd be incredible in a rotation with Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott, whoever else they bring in. Maybe they go sign somebody. I mean, you talk about an interior presence. That's the guy you want on San Francisco.
That's a good call. Kyle L. says, no O-line is tough. Well, we got 2 O-linemen. He says, swap Evans and Benda for an interior offensive lineman. Okay, fair enough. G-Code Travels Vlog POV says, is there an unexpected free agent signing you'll be shocked the 49ers ended up signing? KC guard Trey Smith, wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, Antioch High School, Najee Harris, etc. Well, it's so funny. I personally would love to see Najee here with the Niners. Why? Because the Niners don't have a back who can punch it inside the 5. JP Mason is a big back in body, but he's a small back in style. And, Isaac Guerendo is a big-bodied guy, but he's a receiver. And he runs up the back of his O-lineman. He's got terrible vision. He fumbles the ball. And then you've got Christian McCaffrey, who's got 2 Achilles issues, coming off a major PCL injury. I think he's probably played his best football, and he's not a great short yardage back. That's not what makes him great. He's great as a receiver, and he's great to the edges. So I don't know if Najee's going to get broken off, but man, Najee Harris is a horse. Najee Harris is an absolute monster of a runner. And yeah, if I could get Najee Harris to sign with the Niners for cheap, because I don't think he's going to get paid big bucks. We'll see. I mean, there's a lot of talk that Dallas wants him. There's talk that a number of teams want him. But I love Najee's power. And I don't think there's that many guys who run with that kind of power. And the Niners, as far as I'm concerned, Sterling, they have to get out of this draft. They have to be able to run the ball inside the 5. Right now, the biggest problem with the Niners offensively is not the O-line. Well, I mean, I guess it's part of it. But it's the fact that, Brendel's supposedly great, but they can't run on the goal line. Juice is a Pro Bowl fullback, and you're one of 5 teams in football that even use a fullback, and you can't run for a yard when you need it. So to me, I'm changing out Juice. I'm changing out Brendel. I'm changing out Banks. And I'm adding a runner with contact balance or with power. And in this draft, we got some good players. But, if you could get Najee Harris, I would. That's the one guy I would – out of these guys. Now, obviously, Trey Smith is a tremendous guard. I don't think he's leaving Kansas City. And if he is, he's probably going to be a high-priced item. Hopkins is done. He's just nothing special about Hopkins at this point anymore. And Najee – It's running back. If running backs are continuing to be devalued, I would sign him. If running backs suddenly get paid, then no, I'd probably go in a different direction. But if I could get Najee man, I mean, I would use him on the goal line. I would use him as a change up with McCaffrey, and I would love to see Najee in a Niner uniform. It would be incredible. Plus, we'd have him on the show all the time. That'd be great. I've had him on a bunch on the radio, and his agent Doug Hendrickson's a friend of mine, and Najee's just all class, man. I mean, on draft day when he came out, he got invited to New York, and he's like, "No, I'm not going to New York. I'm gonna have a party that I'm gonna pay for at the Richmond Boys and Girls Club because I was homeless as a kid, and the Richmond Boys and Girls Club saved my life." And so I'm going to give back, and I'm going to have a big draft party at the Richmond Boys and Girls Club. That's what Najee's about. So if I can get Najee, I'd want Najee.
It'd be really fun. He'd definitely be that 1-2 punch that San Francisco, I won't say like desperately needs, but you certainly want to have. Like you have your Lightning, you have your Thunder with CMC, and then, obviously Najee Harris in this circumstance. I do think there are 2 veteran names I wouldn't mind them signing for under the radar guys. One of them, Mike Hilton. He played nickel with the Steelers and the Bengals.
Yeah, he's
a couple of years back. He's feisty. The AFC North, the style of brand of football, I think Saul would really like to have in his secondary. He's not going to be too expensive. You talk about that $3 to $8 million range for a third cornerback. That makes a lot of sense to me. And he's
Loved
only
him.
about
he played at Ole Miss, I believe, and he was really good in college.
He's again, he plays the AFC North. He wants to get into fights, and he's just aggressive the way he plays. I also would love if San Francisco signed Juwan Johnson, the tight end from New Orleans.
Saints. Yeah.
He's about 28 years old, but I think he is so underrated with what he can do. He isn't the best blocker, which may scare them away, but he's a heck of a receiver. He'll go up and get it. He'll fight through contact. You talk about, getting a viable number 2 option behind George Kittle. Juwan Johnson would be so fun to watch in this offense.
No doubt. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to Better. We should tell everybody the live stream sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get that first deposit matched up to $200. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And thanks to Sharp Corners, sports cards and collectibles. My good friend Anthony Catania down there in Pacific Grove. Give him a call at 831-521-5264. And Sterling, awesome stuff, man. We should do this on the regular. I really enjoy your breakdown. Enjoy your Niner dialogue. I'll give you the final word. We're 2 hours and 11 minutes into this live stream. We've got almost 2,500 people watching this thing as it's 10:20 at night. You got a final thought before we head out of here?
Yeah, Deebo Samuel. See you later.
Deebo, it was nice knowing you, but it's over. It's over. Anyway, for Sterling, I'm Larry. Have a great night, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of.